And we are recording. Hello, Candace. How are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So I have to ask, so how's things in Nevada these days?
Honestly, I stay away from people these days. So in my little bubble, things are quite nice. Lots of nature. The weather's kind of perfect right now. So I'm kind of just chilling. I'm having a
Yeah.
good time.
Oh, it's good. Unfortunately, up here in Toronto, we're down into our second lockdown. So we had this mandatory shutdown. So everything is locked down again for the second time. So it's nutty. So it's like, man, I want to move to the States. I have a friend who lives in Colorado and says, we can still move around. You just got to, have your protocols in order. So
Yeah, they're not that crazy here. I wish they'd be a little more crazy because there's so many people around, but you can go to restaurants, you have to wear a mask. You can basically do anything. You just have to wear
wow.
a mask. Yeah.
That's crazy. That is
hmm
that is not existent. The only thing that are open now are grocery stores, um, liquor stores, which is amazing. It's so bizarre,
Yeah.
and a few medical and things, but everything else is closed down. Restaurants been closed down for a while. They keep outdoor patios. I mean, we're up in here in Toronto, so I mean the weather gets like freezing cold, but we had outdoor patios all set up, but they've changed that. So
Are they doing takeout or delivery?
some of it, but now they closed that down too as well. So it's a stay home policy, like strict. So nobody can go. So nobody can go to work on that. So
Oh, that's a
yeah,
different world than over here. Yes.
yeah, that's the joys of being a Canadian. So you ever make it up here during your film industry?
Yes, yes. I shot a movie in Toronto a long, long time ago when I was an actress, probably in 2006. And then about 4 years ago, I was going to Vancouver every month to shoot this Lululemon catalog because I was still modeling at the time. So I spent quite a bit of time in Canada and I loved it. Really did.
Yeah. Well, like, yeah. I mean, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about. So, how did you go from the successful kind of modeling television career to now this amazing coach that you're helping so many people? How did that transition happen?
Whew, I got chills when you asked me that. It's interesting because it's almost like I had to wait to do my purpose. When I was really, really, really young, I was in therapy with my family because they were going through a divorce. I was 9 years old. And I remember asking my therapist between 9 and 11, is there anyone I can talk to that's like a spiritual psychologist? And she was like, what the hell is that? And I just felt like you're not getting deep enough. You're not understanding the emotions that I'm even starting to understand. And I just felt like no one was getting me as a highly sensitive kid. And so I always knew, I want to be like a therapist, but like deeper. And it didn't exist in the world at the time. So then I got really into naturopathic medicine and all these kinds of energy healing. I would walk around like a chakra wand when I was a teenager. It was weird. And I ended up in high school having an awakening of just kind of understanding that everything is as it should be, but I don't know what to do with this. And so I had this dream one night that I'm going to be traveling the world. And I just got this idea. A girlfriend said to me, why don't you be a model? And this is in high school. And I was like, that sounds fun. And so, long story short, that happened very quickly and easily for me. And I was whisked off to Japan the week after I graduated from high school on a contract, and then Germany, and then Greece. It just kept going. And it was just this way of me to see different cultures and understand myself in a way that wasn't really shown in just America. It was really interesting. And I learned different religions and different spiritual practices being in all these countries. And then I came home and I had a great career, but I was still longing to do the thing I was always wanting to do, which was something aligned with spirituality, with holistic thought. And so it was when I wanted to retire, I was about 30 years old. I was like, I want to retire from this career. I've done it. I'm tired. And I noticed that there was a school down the street from my house now that was a master's program in spiritual psychology.
Wow,
And
very
I
cool.
said, boom, that's what I've been waiting for. So I went there and that was it for me. I eventually like cut off the modeling little by little. And then when I graduated, it was almost like I was there in school and my teachers were like, you were made for this. I said, yes, I know. And I was so frustrated that the world wasn't ready for me when I was ready to do it. But then I fell right into it. It was just this, started channeling, all this stuff started happening. And it was just this ownership of this deep purpose I've had for as long as I can remember. It
Wow,
feels like
that's
Christmas.
that's amazing, because to find it at such a young age, to kind of know back then, to ask those questions at 9 years old. I wish I had that kind of that type of information back then. But I wanted to ask you about spiritual psychotherapy or spiritual psychology, your background on that. How is that different from regular psychology? Do you guys study different people? Like, are you more Jungarian, or is it more like Maslow? Are you into like John Bradshaw stuff? Like, where does it all start? What's the difference?
There's a huge difference. I love this question. I'm not a therapist. And the reason that I decided not to go that route is because I don't like pathology. I don't like giving labels to people and saying you're stuck in this label. I think that it works for some people to get some more understanding about themselves. But as a young kid at 7 years old, being diagnosed with ADHD, I think it was a really, really big wound that it created in me. However, it did make me see that I'm outside the box. It did make me see that I've got some other things going on and I think different, but it was a negative thing at the time. So I didn't go that route. In spiritual psychology, we studied all therapy. My favorite is always Jung. Carl Jung is
Yeah,
like, I feel like, yeah,
he's the
that's
guy.
what I believe. Yeah. But it also works with really healing the inner child, emotional wounds, seeing that you're a soul having a human experience. You're not just a person on a planet with some kind of societal mission. It's more like aligning with something higher to be able to survive society. It's completely opposite. And most of my clients that come to me are like, holy shit, Candace, I've been in therapy for 20 years and you are healing me. Why is this so different? And one of the reasons is I'm not healing you. I'm showing you how to heal yourself because I'm giving you tools every single day to shift your perspective, but also relate to yourself in life differently. In therapy, which I think therapy can be really great for a lot of people, but oftentimes in therapy, people find that they're talking too much and then they're reopening their wounds or talking about the issues. And a lot of therapy doesn't give you resolve, where spiritual psychology gives you resolve because you're realizing who you truly are rather than functioning from these sort of constructs and conditions that really mess us up a lot of time.
Yeah, I've been in the therapy process, so I do understand that, and they do kind of get you stuck in the story instead
Mm-hmm.
of actually dealing with the actual things. And some of the therapists I've seen were cognitive behavioral, which really helped a lot, just changed my behavior, but it really didn't get to the source of why I'm doing what I'm doing. So
Yes.
I end up, as much as I would functionally change things in my habits and behaviors very slowly, I might add, it
Yes.
never really got to the real meat of it. It didn't get to like the inner child work. So
Yes.
when I heard on your videos, you talk about inner child work, big fan of it. I think it's one of the quintessential things that most people need. It's not a quintessential, you need to do it. It's just that
You
if
need
you're
to
on
do
this,
it.
if you're on this journey, you got to do it. That's just, there's no way around it. And you put it in such a practical approach, but a very approachable thing, which I find, which is fascinating because that type of work can be it's very messy. It can be very messy, a lot of trauma, things showing up, and
Mhm.
it's not always the great. And it takes tough, but it takes courage to do it. So
Mhm.
I commend you on that. And I know you talk a lot about, your own personal experiences too, as well, which I think is very, very valid too, because as somebody who's, practicing and coaching people, you got to come from experience, because how could you really relate to somebody that if you've never had shit happen in your life, how do you know how to talk about it? You
Well,
know?
a lot of people tell me, well, my clients always say the reason, and they come back. I see people for years and years and years. The reason I'm with you is because you get me, because you've done it and you came out the other side. And I used to think before I started coaching, I was like, I have to be totally healed before I do anything. But that's ridiculous because you're never totally healed. It's just you have tools to continue healing, right? Hello.
Yeah.
So I never say, I'm above you all. Listen to me. I say, I'm with you. Listen to what I'm going through and how I'm doing it. And people get inspired by the pain that I have to go through with grace and ease. And that's the difference is when people are like, I'm your guru, run away. Because if you're human, in my opinion, you ain't a guru because you're on this planet and you're a human and you have human experiences.
That is so true.
So I call myself the wounded healer. I do a mixture of things, but it's really a wisdom that comes from the experience of having to heal myself very much by myself in certain ways for a long time and always having frustration around that. You said earlier, man, I wish I knew my purpose at a young age. Well, no, because it was very frustrating to me to have this purpose and not have an outlet for it and not have words for it and just have to do all this work and say, universe, why do I have to go through all this shit? And then when I get to an older age, I'm like, oh, that's why, because now I can help others understand everything that I really had to go through. And that brings me more joy than anything, honestly.
Yeah, like I really I gravitate to the wounded healer. I just had somebody who was doing an astrology chart with me, and we talked about that. And there's this asteroid called Cryon. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Yeah, the wounded healer, and that's just that's me too as well. So you're preaching to the choir here.
Good.
Um, it's really amazing. So you have so many courses that you teach, and one of the things I was looking at was self-love and love.
Hmm.
I think that's another big thing. I know personally myself, when you're struggling to have self-love, you always kind of look at for somebody else in relationships and things like that. And a lot of them are not always, I've had a few toxic relationships in my day. And you realize that, now I can look back and go, holy shit, yeah, that was not the best place for me to be. And I was projecting, I was doing all this, just trying to get wholeness back through this other person. But I was the one that was so wounded that it was just like blah,
Yes.
all out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I teach this course called Emotional Rehab, which is basically it's the best course I've ever created. I'm obsessed with it. It's basically healing the emotional wounds that create toxic relationships and also hold you back from that true fulfillment of purpose. And a lot of that course is actually doing inner child work, mirror work. Oh my God, so many things. But because of that course, I'm now launching a new course called Shadow Work, because the reality of you projecting or getting from someone else what isn't in there is actually just the part of your shadow that needs to be integrated. And so it's interesting because I'll talk to a lot of people and like, shit, Candace, my life's awesome, but my freaking relationship. And I'm like, cool. Let's look at what you're avoiding in life. Most people are avoiding intimacy. Sorry, that's my dog.
That's okay.
He's a puppy.
That's all right.
They're avoiding intimacy. They're avoiding conflict with, if you're a highly sensitive person, you hate conflict. You're avoiding your own power. So what you do, this is what I used to do. See, you have to settle down. What I used to do is I would date really powerful men because I wasn't claiming my power yet. And what I realized through, I'm so sorry.
It's
What
okay.
I realized, he wants to be part of it.
It's fine. Doing a podcast, you realize people are working from home. So I've had kids run in, mom, mom, mom. I've had husbands come in, so that's the great thing about editing. It's part of it too, but it just shows that it's very real. So, I mean,
Yeah.
of course, dogs love energy, right? So when you get two energetic people yapping, it's like, okay, what's going on? What's going on?
That's what he does. His name is Saint. He's basically like part of this. So,
Yeah.
sorry about that.
Oh, good.
Annoyingness. Sit down. Here's your bone, baby. Okay, moving on. So I would attract these powerful men because I was afraid of my own power. And so at least I'm like, okay, at least I feel whole because I'm with someone powerful. So I don't like to be that. And what was so interesting when I did my own inner child work and shadow work is as a child, I felt like a lot of my power was taken away from me by being put on Ritalin and being sort of numbed and sort of like dumbed down, even though I was like, I've got all this wisdom. People are like, but that's not what we're teaching. I felt very powerless to that. And when I realized that my power wasn't going to be taken away anymore, I stopped looking for it outside of me and I started really becoming it. Not in like I'm powerful way, but like I'm going to be my expression of self way, and I'm going to go after everything I want because I know I deserve it, and I know it's not scary to be in that space of authentic power. So people do that a lot. This one client I have is really afraid of conflict, but he keeps attracting women that are really dramatic and full of conflict. And so I said, well, what do you do when that woman comes around? He's like, I don't know, I shake, I freak out. I go, okay, cool. Well, that's because you haven't integrated conflict. You have a trauma around conflict. So what I have him do is watch videos of people having a lot of conflict while he's at home in a safe space. So he gets used to not being afraid of it and running from it. If you can integrate conflict and not think that it's going to break me down and kill me, you don't have to attract it. The reason we attract it is because it's in our shadow. So it's resonating with this part of us we're totally unaware of.
Yeah.
And once you heal that, you don't need the lesson. So you'll start attracting things that are more in alignment with, oh, my integrated self.
Yeah, the happy self, the joyous person that you always are meant to be, instead of this crazy person that's just kind of running through life trying to figure things out through these wounded lenses, as I call them. You just can't figure things out. I mean, yeah, and I can really commend you on that too. Is just the body of work that you have done over the last little while. It's amazing. Your videos are great. I mean, obviously you can just tell by the amount of views you're resonating with people in the comments. And again, it's just something that's That's really amazing. One of the things I wanted to talk about too, as well, was you talk about core wounding and tribal wounds and family of origin stuff like that. How do I'm always looking for practical approaches for people listening. So, what can they do right now besides going to your website and picking up one of your courses?
Mm-hmm.
What could some of the people do right now to start looking at those wounds, figuring out what they can do? So, maybe some practical tips or some techniques that they can look at right now.
I love it. I'm just going to throw his bone over here. Go, baby. Get away. Yeah, I love it because people, one of the things that I find really annoying when people are trying to really heal is they'll read a book and they'll gather all this information, but they're like, how do I apply it? I get it, but I still feel the same. I'm still having that trigger. I'm still having that pattern. So one thing I really love to do when we start to do the mother wound and the father wound healing, because it's, in my opinion, I've always said since I was a kid, actually, I feel like there are emotional genetics because you can see like the codependency that goes through families and the narcissism and shit that people don't heal. So one thing I do is look at your triggers. What did you make it mean?
That's important. Yeah.
What did you make it mean? Because it's not what's happening. If you're healed, someone can reject you and you're like, oh, that's funny. They probably have something going on. If you're not healed, oh my God, what it is about me, right? So you have to look at what you're making it mean. And then where did that come from? Another really important thing that's hard for people to do because people are stuck in the vision of who their parents are, God, survival, false idol. Look at your dad and look at the truth of who your dad is. He's a wounded human who didn't do much inner work. So he got that from his dad. Oh, wow. Now, when you look at your wounded self, you're like, shit, that's what my dad does. Okay, so dad's not God. Dad is a human with wounds. So why do I put him on a pedestal of authority over my own inner guidance?
Yeah.
We don't go into that thought process of even considering that I can be my own permission slip to be who I am.
Yeah, it's so ingrained.
It's so ingrained because it's in your emotional, it's before the age of 8, we go through this whole emotional imprint that we don't question because it becomes such a pattern and a habit that that's our reality. But then we're like, shit, my reality is not what I want it to be. Why? Because mom and dad, inner critic, are in my head. And what are my thoughts? I don't even know how to know my thoughts, right? So there's a whole process behind that.
It's all about them. And that's the thing. If you have toxic parents and stuff like that, you don't understand. It's the reality is just through their lenses. And it's interesting. I know the idea about genetics, and I've, done like family of origin work, and you kind of see the patterns in the genetics of it, you used to call it a genogram, like John Bradshaw would do a genogram and see where everything is. So you take your two sides of the family and you do a history of what everything is done. So you look at all the different health issues, certain things, and you talk about figuring out where the stuff, and you can look at different patterns from either side. And you look, and then there's me. And it's like, here is this dumping ground of all this genetic material that's from their grandparents and their great grandparents. And it's lifetimes of work of trying to heal stuff. And it can be a little over daunting, but at the same time, too, it's very illuminating because that illumination is kind of like liberation at the same time, because you can go, oh shit, I can change that, because the one thing you always hear, I don't want to be like my parents.
Yes. And you brought up self-love earlier, and I just want to tie something back to that because it's really important, is people are constantly looking for acceptance and permission from their parents before they allow themselves to love themselves and own themselves. And we need to stop doing that because it never came from there. So it's never going to. Yeah. And what we do is we keep recreating this emotional imprint I was talking about with a partner who's like that energy to say, well, maybe I'll get it now so that the original story is validated. But what we really need to do is invalidate the original story so that we can own the truth of who we are. And so that's what I talk about with shadow work with a lot of clients is, you just married your dad because your dad never gave you what you needed. So you think this one will. Well, that's silly because the other one didn't. So, and people are attracted to that because that is the imprint. And so how do you change that attraction is you have to change your understanding and also do the trauma work so your body can release those emotions. I always say, feel it to heal it. Yeah. Release it. We'll get real about how you feel so you can heal, because you have to be vulnerable. You have to grieve. You have to understand you were a victim to not getting a need met before you can own the power of no longer being a victim. And when you do that, you're like, oh, okay, look at who my mom is. She fights with people. She's whatever it is. That's not me. Okay, what's me then? And people are so afraid to do that because uncertain identity is one of the scariest things. What if
Sure.
I really am not worthy? What if I really don't deserve? But that's all bullshit. You
Yeah.
are still having a human experience. You deserve every desire you've ever had.
Yeah. That is so true. That is so true. And it's interesting, you talked about, marrying your or dating your
Oh
father, like I know I've dated a few of my mothers, and it's interesting because now I can look back at it. At the time, it was like the most toxic and worst kind of relationships. But I look back now and I could see the humor in it, but also I could see the healing out of it. It's like, man,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
wow. And it was interesting too. At the time, I know from one of the girls I dated, I was basically like her father at the
Mm-hmm.
time. So we were both two people, very wounded people, trying to work out their core issues from their parents, her with her father, and then me with my mother, the issues and stuff like that going back and forth. So I can look at it now and it's like, I'm so much more aware when I go into a relationship and I start dating, and you kind of know already, I mean, myself being highly sensitive, I kind of pick up on it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just really, it's illuminating. It's very, very illuminating.
Well, and I also think, these are the relationships that are our lessons. And it's interesting. I could tell you a lot of personal stories, which I won't bore you right now. But what I've learned through a couple of really serious, amazing relationships is, they are healing for different reasons at different levels till you get to the point where you're like, oh my God, I love myself. I've integrated myself. I just want someone who's my mirror, my partner. I don't need a daddy, a mommy. I am my own father and mother inside. So
Yes.
it's almost that emotional maturity that needs to happen to then feel like, oh, I'm good. I just want to share that. And I want someone that has the qualities that I love in myself. But so often people don't love themselves. So they're looking for something that they aren't. And what ultimately happens is you're like, oh God, when you start to heal and you're with someone that's not like you, you're like, what do we have in common? And that's when people are like, shit, can we grow together? I'm like, no, you're two totally different humans. You got to go.
It ain't happening.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah. And I
Mm-mm.
think that's so important, is that once you find that energy, that joy, that independence, that self-love, that confidence, all those things that we lack as children in the wounds, and we finally empower ourselves to make those choices. It's so hard. Like, I mean, now it's like one of those things I find it difficult in the dating area, is just to find, because I've done my work and a lot
Yeah.
of people haven't. So you kind of go out in the dating pool and it's like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay. And it's like, all right, thanks. And then I find it was very difficult. But that being said, I know you talk a lot about your self-love and your mastery courses too, as well, but you do the emotional rehab. Is there something in the emotional rehab that you teach people that they can use all the time? Like
Yeah.
what?
Yes. There's so much. Emotional rehab is a 12-week course, but I'm with you the whole time. So there's live Q&As. So it's like you have a support system and there's a bunch of people that you can relate to as well. So the first thing I'll say is it's community of like-minded people where you're like, holy shit, I'm not alone and I'm not weird for having this. That is so important and people don't understand. When you have consistent support when you're going through emotion, your trauma releases. That's
Yeah.
number one. Because what's the definition of trauma? Going through something really negatively emotional and having no support. So
Yes.
you're stuck in it. You don't know how to resolve it. So in this course, you're resolving shit all the time. And also, I go through every week is a different theme. There's inner child work, right? There's mirror work. Now we're talking about narcissism, toxic relationships, gaslighting, all these different things that people are like, whoa, that's me. Am I codependent? Am I a love addict? Oh, it's none of those things. I just have these wounds that I need to love and heal and integrate. So I teach people how to integrate their inner child so that you feel more whole, oneness. I teach people how to have boundaries, which are really important when it comes to
Yes.
self and relationship. Boundaries are crazy, crazy important.
I had
I
issues
also
with
teach
that.
people, mhm. I
I
teach
had serious issues with boundaries.
Well, most people do
Yeah.
because, well, we won't go into it, but childhood
Yeah.
and society. But the other thing I teach is about society versus universal law. I also teach about the false self, how it's developed, how to break it down, how to claim the true self, what the hell the true self is, how to know the difference, between fear, love, wounds, wisdom, all the things that people get confused about when they're healing alone. when you read these books and you heal alone, you can only get to a certain point because you're like, well, where do I go from there? How does, people come to me and I'm like, oh, I just made sense of your whole life. And they're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Because
20
I can
minutes, it's
see,
done.
yeah, it's done. In the first 15 minutes of a session, people were like, what did you just say? You just made sense of my life. I'm like, I can't help it. I feel into you. I can feel your core wounds. I can feel what's going on in your throat. I feel it. And then we release it. And when you release these stored wounds, it's almost like you become this channel of clarity for your own life. And that is priceless, in my opinion.
Is. You can't put a price on it.
You cannot.
Is there any other techniques, like anything holistic that they can do too as well? Like, I'm a big fan of energy work, and especially, supporting, because when you have these wounds and you're doing a lot of mental, emotional stuff, you get the physical, chemical, spiritual stuff that you kind of need to take care of. Are there certain things that you'd recommend to your clients, like, yoga, acupuncture, chiropractic, things like that, to kind of help them during that time frame?
So many things. I always talk about my own experience because it's helpful. When I was going through my deepest healing, I would get a massage every single week, sometimes more, because it really helped me release it out of the body. It's one thing to release it out of the mind, but that somatic experience, releasing out of your body, is massive. If you can't afford that, or you don't like that, or you don't want to do that, what I say is either self-massage as you're going through mantras, as you're releasing emotionally, yoga positions, I love doing child's pose. I love doing certain poses for different people when you're releasing certain things, pigeon pose to release emotion, but letting it flow as you're also doing the physical act. Acupuncture is amazing. EFT is life-changing.
Love that. Love that.
Yes. I also have people do walking meditations. I did 2 hours of this walking meditation for 2 years as well.
Wow.
And it was so healing in the mountains. And I felt like it was such a medicine from nature at the same time to ground in your authentic self, your true essence. I also love to give people writing assignments. I have all different kinds of writing assignments that people freak out about because you're connecting to a part of yourself that you're like, yeah, I get it. No, but when hand to paper, you're releasing energy. You're burning stuff. There's so many things, but I think a short answer is meditate and do EFT.
Yeah, EFT is very important. I'm a big fan of EMDR too as well. Have you ever heard of EMDR? I think that's fantastic, especially for really traumatized people who've had that. Now, I've had some real serious trauma in my youth, and when I got hooked onto EMDR, it was like a light bulb. Like, it literally just changed things so very much, very, very quickly. But EFT for sure, self-managing too as well. You're feeling stressful, start tapping, get into the thymus, start tapping. Love that too as well. Massage for sure. Like, I'm very much mind, body, spirit type person. I firmly believe that. A lot of the courses through my readings, it's always been that same thing: mind, body, spirit. You got to get the two out, because if you're doing all this emotional work, it's stuck energy in the body. You got to get it out. So massage for sure. Now, one of the things I've found, if you can't afford massage, you can go to massage schools and get it a lot cheaper too as well. So if you know that there's a massage therapy school around you, it's like dirt cheap. It's like sometimes 10, $15 just to have a student work on you, and you go in there and they treat you. So it's a great way of doing that. I've done that a few times.
That's
Just to kind of, just to get that. And I'm so, you talk about massage and it's like, God, I want to go on massage right now.
No, I have to go. But during quarantine, what I did is I invested in a massage chair at home and a foot massage thingy from Sharper Image, because I was like, I'm not going to not have this. So I do that. But also, one other thing I want to mention, because this has really been big for me lately, is I do light therapy in a jacuzzi at night. I do like even your tub. Light therapy, you can even buy one. It's like just all these different lights, play music, and put Epsom salts in your bath. I'll stay in there for 2 hours if I have time, and I'll just process my emotions. And I swear to God, I get out and I'm like, I gotta go to bed. It's so relaxing. You can then set a bedtime intention with your subconscious mind and say, I'd like to process these emotions and let them go. Your dreams will guide you. It's kind of a really amazing spa, spiritual healing experience. So everyone who has a bathtub can do this.
Yeah, for sure. Do you do a lot of subconscious work too as well? Do you do a lot of reprogramming with that? Is that part of the curriculum?
Yeah, I do. Because it's my own stuff that I've kind of figured out myself, I just share it with people who I know are into it. And what it really is for me is it's kind of like just talking, but shifting into another perspective. And people always say to me, Candace, it doesn't feel like I'm just talking to you. It's like a transmission. Something's happening. And I feel like when you're talking to someone who can be an unconditional mirror to you, which is not what we get with our parents, because our parents have all this guck, right? But if you can be with someone who can see you without judgment, you can start to get into those subconscious patterns a lot easier, because there's less resistance, there's less fear of what someone's going to think of me. So I do it a little bit differently, but it's more of like how I'm relating to you is getting into you in a way where the patterns start to shift.
Okay. So when you're part of the process, when you're talking to your clients, do you do like a meditation prior to it, or do you get them into a certain state where they're kind of changing those brain waves? Do you do anything like that to kind of get them into that state?
I do that with my monthly membership, because with the monthly membership, there's a whole bunch of people from around the world. We're all on Zoom together. So I have everyone sit for about 5 to 10 minutes, depends on the day. And I'll do a guided meditation to get everyone on the same level of the same consciousness. And it's amazing what happens, because everyone from around the world, different ages, different genders, different whatever, the same issue. I mean, I call it the collective consciousness, because I'm like, damn, my people find me, and it's like the right people find me at the right time. So I do that for the monthly membership. I do that for emotional rehab. But with my one-on-one clients, I'll do it if I feel like they need to be centered before they start talking. But some people are like, Candace, I have so much I got to say. And I said, you know what? Start where you want and I'll guide you. Some people don't want to relax before they go into it because they've been waiting for this session for like an hour.
They're about to explode. They just like, damn it, I've been holding this forever. I had this light bulb moment, and it's like, oh my God, I got to tell her, I got to do all this stuff like this, and it's like this, and just go like it just like verbal diarrhea, because it just they're so excited because they had that epiphany, and it's just like a light bulb change. And like
always.
Yeah.
People come to me with like notes. I'm like, okay, girl, we're gonna get to it. It's cute.
A 4-page journal, it's just, lots of information. Now, with this whole COVID thing and a lot of people out there struggling, are you finding you're getting more clients now? People are, because it's forcing them to kind of reevaluate their life, and they're kind of like going, I need help. I need to figure out what the fuck I'm doing.
Well, for me, it's just been incredibly consistent, but I was really shocked when COVID started. I have this course that I do 4 times a year. It's been packed, like full, like people want community. So my membership, my monthly membership is the cheapest thing that I offer. That's very affordable for everyone. And literally everyone, most everyone. And it's people are like, oh my God, I just want people. I want community. I want to see people. And so I think that's a really great outlet for people. And as far as coaching goes, it's just, it never missed a beat. And there are, I think, more people now that it's been about a year of COVID who, right when the year started, everyone's like, I want a package. They want to lock themselves in because they know that this is the way. The inner work is the way. We've just lost this systematic approach of, authority, everything's going to be fine. No, it ain't going to be fine. And by the way, your outlets of happiness are gone. So you need to find that inner happiness. And people are like, shit. And I've gone through a lot in the last couple of years of losing my house in a fire, losing my dog, things with my marriage, things going on that I share. And people are like, how the hell are you okay and good? I'm like, because it's from within. And I literally had to experience it and learn it and do it to teach it.
Yeah.
So my clients see that and they're like, shit.
Opportunities and everything else. And that's one of the things I was so happy because part of this podcast is trying to get the right information to the right people out there and create a community. It's been fabulous. I'm meeting so many different new people. I'm learning lots at the same time, learning about myself, learning lots of information, but it's really creating that community, that sense of, this is the information, I've been getting for years and telling people. So now I just got to get it in a bigger platform. So, emotional work is always something that's come up in so many of my readings. It's like, you got to get the emotional work. You got to get that sorted out. So I was very happy when my friend Mel recommended you to my show. And it's like, perfect. I need somebody who's an expert on emotional wounding and getting people through this.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny because, I've always been a severely, highly sensitive kid. And I remember thinking to myself growing up, doesn't anyone know everything is a symptom of emotion? Because it really does boil down to that. If your emotional world is off, everything is off.
Yeah.
your emotions are at peace, which by the way, I teach about controlling emotion and mastering emotion. You can basically choose to feel how you want no matter what's happening.
That's
And
very
people are like,
powerful.
what do you mean? And I'm like, listen, I'm not going to go into it right now, but I'm going through something pretty difficult right now. And I'm like, you know what? No, because I got some shit to do. I'm not going to think about that right now. But what people usually do is that avoidance, Candace? No, it's called structured approach to healing. I'll deal with that after I'm done with my important shit. I'm not going
I
to let it
like that.
sway me off my life and my clients. I will deal with that when I will. And
That
people
is,
don't understand that because they're like, oh my God, I'm triggered. I'm in my trigger. I'm like, but you're not your emotions. You're watching your emotions. And you can give your emotions, like a child, a structure to be heard at a certain time so that it doesn't explode.
yeah. Is that similar to compartmentalize?
I don't think so. I mean,
No.
compartmentalize is like, yeah, I guess so. But the one thing I want to say is it's not like you're saying by emotion. You're saying, oh, I see you. I feel I'm acknowledging you, but we're not going to go into that right now
Yeah. It's
because
like,
mama has something else to do.
yeah, we'll talk about it later. We'll discuss it, but right now it's very inappropriate. We got to kind of figure things
Well,
out. We
it's like
can't.
you're not going to control me. See, people go into things that they need to have control over. I've seen it in my work where people, I'm like, okay, let's look at the deeper root of the eating disorder you had when you were a teenager. Oh, well, I had no control. Yeah, exactly. So when we feel like we can control our emotions, like not, oh, I'm going to control you, but I'm going to manage you and I can give you a structure, then we don't need outlets to become controlling.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And there's no really outburst too, as well, because it's not all of a sudden you just kind of like just have
React.
this big explosion, whether it's anger or you just like, screw it, I'm just going to eat a whole thing of Haagen-Dazs ice cream or drink a whole bottle of Jack or whatever. You kind of go,
End it.
okay, I can manage it. Not a big deal. And that's
Mhm.
something I've learned. And it's been very, very powerful because I had no control over my emotions. They were like, I was the puppet and my emotions were just kind of
Totally.
yeah, just totally controlling me.
Totally. It's hell because you're on a roller coaster all the time. But what's going to happen? It's conditions controlling us, really. It's like that just happened. Oh my God. You know, I got to the point in my life where I'm like, I don't want my conditions to sway me when I'm having a good day. How
Yeah.
am I going to do that? And what I realized is, okay, it's conditional. If I can be unconditional with myself, saying I love myself no matter what, I'm here for myself no matter what, I'm going to stay with myself no matter what, then why would someone who loves themselves allow something outside of themselves to have more power over themselves than you?
Wow. That was deep.
But
Very,
true.
very deep. Very, very true. I mean, you just keep laying truth bombs down there. And, it's interesting. I'm listening to this. It's like, frick, yeah, that was 10 years of therapy done in 50 minutes right here. you
That's
know, and I think
right.
that I think that's it's really important. The therapy process, like you said, it's not always for everybody. It's a
Right.
start. If you're in it already and you're starting, and it's a great process. I've had my own issues with therapy. I think it was a good start. It really gave me the courage and to say that I wasn't as fucked up as I thought I was.
Yeah.
You kind of look back and take that lens and you kind of move it back from a second. You can get a greater perspective of it, and you kind of see like, okay, things weren't too bad. But the overall process, I kind of moved from therapist to therapist, and then you get stuck in that story, and you
Hmm.
just keep repeating it. You go in and you kind of keep repeating it, and then you kind of like it's like Groundhog Day. You just keep it's like you wake up and it's like, shit, it's the same thing again. I'm still repeating the same things. But with your work, it kind of gets to the meat of it so quickly and
Hmm.
so effectively, and it kind of gives people permission. I think that's one of the things I really enjoyed about your videos and then your work is that you allow people to have permission to make changes, which I think is so powerful.
Hmm. That's the thing. I call it the permission slip, actually, because we're looking externally for a permission slip to own ourselves, love ourselves, change ourselves. We're looking out there, but when we're doing that, we're giving our power away, saying, I'm not powerful enough to own my own authority, authentic self, my own authority on my own life.
Yeah.
It's funny because we're looking for someone to say, you can trust yourself about yourself. Oh, what? Look how crazy that is. It's
Yeah.
like, what are we doing? Because we're little children inside still looking for mommy and daddy to say, or some authority figure to say, it's okay to own what you feel. It's okay to own your truth and your power. But what's so funny about it is I got to the point where I was like, that's funny because I'm looking at all these authority figures who became my clients. And I'm like, They got a lot of inner wounds. That's interesting. Why the hell would I listen to someone who's in a position, right?
Of power, yes.
That has nothing to do with your integrity. It has nothing to do with who you truly are, how powerful you really are in your being.
Yeah.
And so, it's just this journey of realizing that everyone is equal. But why do you think you're not?
Yeah, wow, that really says a lot right there. And so many of us think that, for so many years, programmed. So if you were to kind of say, or give a little bit of, I always like to ask my people on my show, it's like, can you give a little bit of truth bombs, a little bit of motivation, inspiration to the listeners? And maybe if somebody's watching this, lay a little truth on them, give them a little inspiration, something that they can leave with this podcast going, they feel better from this podcast.
Oh God, give me a topic.
Well, I think it's okay. Let's take, for example, okay, let's talk about self-love.
Okay.
So if you were basically on stage right now and you had an audience and you wanted to talk about self-love, and I think that's really important. I think loving yourself and understanding what love is so important. And I always say to a lot of people, you're so loved that you have no idea. Like, you have no comprehension of that. You are so loved. You just got to get in touch with that.
That's right.
Yeah. So that being said, I'm going to put you on the spot again.
Yep.
All right, go. You got 15 minutes. Go.
So what I would say about that is, one of the things I like to tell people is how you relate to the issue is the issue, but how you relate to yourself in the issue is the bigger issue. How we relate to ourselves is how we are basically saying, I love you or I don't love you. When you can really think about the question every morning, what would someone who loves themselves do? If you don't know how to love yourself, look at someone who you think loves themselves. What would they do in this situation? How would they relate to themselves? I really take it seriously in my own life because I always ask myself, when I go through difficult times, the thing that I think is pretty good about my self practice is if I need to have a meltdown, I'm like, damn girl, have a meltdown. There's no judgment on my emotional needs. There's no judgment on, what I feel. Now, one thing about behavior, people think that they are their behavior. No, your behavior is an expression of how you're feeling. So if you can just give your feelings a voice without judgment, you're going to behave more in alignment with who you truly are. And you're going to love yourself more because you're going to trust yourself more because you're going to be in your integrity. So how we align with our higher selves is to say, okay, what would someone who loves themselves do? I would not judge what I feel. I would not pretend that I don't deserve what I desire. Think about these things. They're very simple. But if we let ourselves be that energy, we're not going to act out in a way that isn't true for us. And then we're going to have more of a self-loving integration in not only our body and how we're acting with aligned action, but how we're thinking and how others perceive us. It will be all accurate. It will be all the same, and it'll be totally authentic.
Wow. That was powerful. That was absolutely perfect. I think that in itself will, if you guys are listening, anybody's listening right now, and they can take away anything that Candace said, I think it's absolutely brilliant. Get into some inner work, get into those emotional wounds and heal that. I think it's really, really important. And that being said, we're almost out of time. I can't believe it's gone by so fast.
I know.
So if people are listening to this podcast and they're watching this video on YouTube, where can they find you? Where they can find you on the World Wide Web, all that good stuff.
Okay, well, my website is CandaceVanDell.com. Pretty straightforward. My YouTube is my name as well. Everything's really my name. Instagram is my name. Everything's my name. If you Google me, you'll find me. Okay. I made it simple.
Nice. Make it all in one place that they can find you there. Any crazy things that you're coming up with the new year? Any new programs that maybe a new book or anything else coming up that you can maybe?
So I'm going to be the first to mention this here. This is the first person I'm going to say it. So I wrote this book about the Aquarian age, about indigo children, about highly sensitive people and healing inner wounds about 9 years ago. And I didn't release it because I didn't think the world was ready yet. But now that on the 21st of December, we've just come into the Aquarian age, there's so many people asking me about it in a way that I've never heard before. So I'm going to release that book by the end of the year. which I'm so excited about. There'll be, if you're on my
Perfect.
mailing list, you'll get all the information. I'm relaunching Emotional Rehab February 1st. It will start February 14th on Love Day. And Shadow Work is my new course that will be launching later this year. So if you find me, you'll see the wait list for that. You can get on that and you will hear all about the launches. They are things that if you're into this work, you don't want to miss, and you can read all the testimonials. People freak out. So, I like saying that because people are like, well, I don't know. Is this right for me? I'm like, it is. Just trust it. I stand behind it.
Yeah.
Do it. Just do the work. You won't be sorry.
No. And then even if you, for a lot of people who are hesitant on it, just doing the work itself, you will learn so much about yourself that you can apply, whether you kind of go all in, like I would normally do. I would go like 100% all the way in, there's no ifs, ands, or buts, and go
Yeah.
deep. But if you don't, the amount of joy that you will have in the knowledge and just the clarity in your life will be
Yes.
so important. I mean, please, if you get a chance, go to the website, take one of our courses, get the books, well, all the books that you can do. Because I think Emotional Rehab will be a nice book too as well. It'll be a very big bestseller. I'm just throwing it out there. If you take that into a book. But anyways, Candace, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your super busy schedule. And again, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. So I'm just going to close off the show. This has been the Metaphysical Mentor Podcast with Michael Philpott. Thank you so much for joining me, and goodbye for now.